to another episode of Everyday Strong with Dr. Michael G. Daniels. This is your host, C.B. Baker. We are back after a couple of weeks there. So, Dr. Daniels, today we're going to discuss the new Virginia law, where if you get stopped by the police, they have a series of questions they're supposed to ask you. Now, when I read this, Dr. Daniels, I was like, okay, first off, if I was a cop, I'm not about to ask all these questions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now you gotta have body cameras on, so you know you gotta supposedly gotta abide by things.
Mm-hmm.
But I just know, because it wasn't like one or two questions. It was like a questionnaire.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm stopping you for a traffic stop, I ain't about to go through this whole thing. And like that was the number one problem that I saw in it. Like it wasn't, you know, I'm taking a stance. If I was a police officer,
Right.
like would I want to do this? And my answer was no. It's like I wouldn't want to do it. You know, I understand the reasoning behind it, you know, getting all the demographic, and I think it was asking for your race, or why you got stopped, things like that. I can't remember off the top of my head what all the questions were, but it was like good 4 or 5 questions.
Well, the way, and just for people who don't know the new law, you know, let me say this. Effective July, police are required to make a report, and that report is supposed to include your race, so they can keep track of the demographics of all stops, so they can make sure that there is no more police profiling, you know. So the way the law is written, and the problem is not necessarily the way the law is written, a part of its implementation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the way the law is written, I can go by what I observe. But I have to be able to answer those questions. So I don't have to ask you the questions per se.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be able to answer those questions in my report. So if I observe that you are a Black or African American, then that's sufficient. If you know how you know, and if I have your driver's license, then I can answer all the questions based on your driver's license. But if I didn't stop you for that reason, then I may have to get age and all this kind of thing. I think a part of the problems is that there are a group of people that are concerned. You know, as you mentioned, why should a policeman be asking me my race? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, just because I'm dark skinned, does that mean I'm African American?
Right.
And it doesn't. You may be Hispanic, because if you're dark skinned and you're Hispanic, you're not viewed as being African American,
right,
even though you still treated. You know,
right.
We say an N by any other name is still an N,
right?
Right. And then there's some civil rights groups are against the new law, and then there's some civil rights groups are for the law. You know, me personally, as far as the police and them not wanting to do it, I really could care less about whether they want to do it or not. My reason is y'all getting paid. They getting paid.
Right.
So if it takes them 10 minutes to get the work done and turn the report in, turn it in. Because it's supposed to turn it into the local Commonwealth's attorney. And it's supposed to be a public record for examination. I mean, personally, I think it's needed. And the reason why I think it's needed is because there is a history of racial profiling. And our president just said on yesterday, when he was asked a question at a so-called press conference about how did he feel about the number of Blacks that are killed by police and things of that nature. And his response was, why would you ask me that question? More white people get killed and stopped by police than Black people, you know. And that's a part of the problem, in my opinion, is that there are a group of people that don't want to face the facts. Mm-hmm. So we need the facts, I believe, to show people that racial profiling exists. Right. You know, that there are more Blacks and Hispanics stopped than white folk. And here's what I think they also ought to put in there. Not only if you're white, but the color of your hair. Mm-hmm. And because I'd be willing to bet you that less white women with blonde hair get stopped than white women with dark hair.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. You're gonna have all the brunettes pissed off when they get their report.
I'll tell you something else I bet you. I bet more more black women with braids get stopped than black women with perms.
Yeah.
And I'd be willing to bet you that more black men get stopped with facial hair than without facial hair. More black men with tattoos, I bet, get pulled out of the car than black men without tattoos.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I totally agree. You know, but okay, so I gotta play the other side of this.
Play devil's advocate.
So I understand you should not. I understand that we believe there should not be racial profiling, and I agree on the racial profiling. But shouldn't profiling be allowed a little bit? Not racial profiling, but profiling.
Me personally, I don't think if I am legally presumed innocent
Right.
until proven guilty, I don't know how you can always assume that I may be in the wrong. So therefore, I don't think there should be profiling at all. So, I recognize that people may say things like this. Why are you in this neighborhood at 2:00 in the morning? That's profiling.
Right.
And it's true there may be a drug house on the corner, and you may have saw me just drive past, slowly drive past the drug house. Then I saw your police car, so I kept going.
Right.
And it's 2:00 in the morning. So you're going to light me up and just ask me, why am I in the neighborhood? Why can't I be in the neighborhood?
Right.
There's no law that says I cannot drive through the neighborhood. But the police officer's response will be, that's justifiable cause to search your vehicle.
Right.
And they'll ask you, do you mind if I search your vehicle? And if you say no, they don't let it go. Once you say no, then they say, that's justifiable cause because
you said no.
because you said no, you must have been hiding something.
Right.
Then they order you out the car and frisk you and search your vehicle anyway.
Right.
I think I ought to be able to drive anywhere anybody else drives
Yeah.
without being frisked or looked at differently just because of the neighborhood I am in. That's what I think. And maybe it's because I've been racially profiled before on several occasions, not just once, but on several occasions. Let me tell you, I remember one day I was in a Kmart, okay? I'm in a Kmart. I'm stressing Kmart.
Right.
All right? Now, it was early on in my career, and I was going in to buy some neckties because, just got a brand new office job, and, I'm trying to dress reasonably. But I didn't have the money. I'm a young father. I didn't have the money to, really,
You couldn't go to Dillard's and get the $50 tie.
Right.
You had to go get the,
I was getting $5 ties. $5 ties. Right. So I'm in there. So I'm looking at ties. I'm just looking at ties. This guy comes by, and I assume he was the store detective. And he said, well, what are you looking for? And I said, I'm just looking for a green tie. He picked the green tie and gave it to me and said, well, go ahead and buy it then. And I said, well, I'm still looking. That ain't the tie that I want. Well, you need to hurry up and find out what you want to buy. Now, see, that's racial profiling.
Right.
Now, there's no way I would believe if a white person was in there taking their time looking at tie. Who in the heck wants to steal a tie from Kmart? Let's get for real.
Right.
If the guy is in there going to steal a tie, you should give it to him. Because that says what? He's broke.
Right.
He got a job interview. Or he got to go before the judge tomorrow.
Right.
He's trying to fix himself up. I would have just said, you know what, even if you stole that tie, you wouldn't keep that tie. It won't expensive anyway, but you're trying to look good.
Right.
He gonna sit and try to force me to just leave like I shouldn't take my time and look for a tie or look for several ties. It's just racial profiling. I can't believe a white man would have been stopped from looking.
Right.
And I'm in Kmart. I'm not in Dillard's. I'm not in Macy's downtown New York.
Right.
I'm in a Kmart.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. But I feel like sometimes a lot of those instances like that happen in places where it's lower to low middle class to mid low. It's like
I mean, Kmart.
right. I get it.
And no wealthy people.
No
shopping
wealthy
in-
people. Right. It's no wealthy people in Kmart. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. We know what, because this is tape, so we can edit this out.
We edit it out.
Right.
Don't
So-
edit nothing out.
So, is the real issue in America really lower income white people being envious of black people, and especially successful black people?
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the racist things that you see on social media and things like that, if you look at the person doing it,
Mm-hmm.
it's like they're angry at the fact that you are at the same level as them, but and they feel like we shouldn't be.
Right. Or you shouldn't speak out.
Right.
It's like they'll say to us, if you don't like it, leave.
Right.
But when they don't like something, they don't leave.
No.
See, no one tells a person who's white, well, if you don't like this country, leave. What they do if they don't like this country, they try to change this country.
Mm-hmm.
But they tell us quick, just leave it, love it or leave it. Well, why should we leave our homeland?
Mm-hmm.
I've actually had someone tell me to go back to Africa. Go back. To go back means I must have been born there. I wasn't born in Africa. I was born in North Carolina, so I can go back to North Carolina maybe, but back to Africa, that's not my homeland.
Right.
I know what you're saying is true, that there is a sense for many white racists and white nationalists that we don't deserve to have, that we just don't deserve to have. But I also think there is a sense of many white people that blacks in general, for some reason, are less than human. Because when you look at statistics, more crime is committed by whites than blacks.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, if you talk to people, they want to act like more black people commit crime,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'll give you another example. Every now and again, I'll turn to Fox. Every now and again, and I get there and I'm mad every time. I hate that I even look at it, but I'll turn in like an idiot just to see if they're going to say something that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
What they said was this. They said that since the George Floyd incident, that people are walking around acting like they have a right to carry a gun, talking about black people.
Wow.
That since George Floyd, that black people are walking around as if they have a right to carry a gun.
And they do have a right to carry a gun.
Absolutely, that's the point.
Right.
Now, the person that said that was a black chief of police. Now, no one has ever said anything about white people who will fight to the death for the Second Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
They're fighting and talking about the NRA is always saying you have a right to carry a gun.
Mm-hmm.
That the only way to stop a man with a gun is with another gun. So
Yeah.
why is it when white people want guns, the NRA is backing them? I haven't heard the NRA say one thing about these black folk have a right to carry guns. Now, one thing that they
Right.
said. So what does that suggest? That when President Obama was elected, gun sales skyrocketed.
Mm-hmm.
You could not buy a hollow point bullet for a 9mm because the shells were empty. White folk was buying up ammunition. They was buying up guns left and right. Now they're saying that we
Right.
are walking around acting like we have a right to carry a gun. Well, we do have a right to carry guns. But their idea of being black in America is being subservient to them.
Mm-hmm.
That we should not have the same rights that they have. When those white people marched into the state capitol to one state capitol, they had assault rifles with them.
Mm-hmm. And nothing happened.
Nothing happened. There's no way a bunch of black folk could walk into any state capitol with assault rifles and not be dead right now.
Yeah. Right.
So that's why I think it's imperative that we do get data, empirical data on how many times officers pull black people over, because it kind of sets I guess, it allows us to see the mentality of that officer. See, when officers do things like kill a black man, right, and they say, well, he had his cell phone, I thought it was a gun.
Right.
What they'll say is, well, he has no incidents prior of racial profiling. Well, not necessarily. We just don't have the data. Mm-hmm. But if you can look back at his record and see, you know what? This guy's been a police officer in this particular city for the last 5 years, and 75 of his stops have been black people. But the population of blacks is 11%.
Right.
That tells you where his mind is at. Mm-hmm. So that means that when he shoots somebody black, it's because he's already determined that they were guilty. Mm-hmm. I also think that police management, the senior management police officers, ought to use that data. Because they have to look at the data and say, wait a minute, I got this white officer, and 90% of his stops are black people.
Right.
See, it's time to call that officer in, have some retraining, some retooling, because that person's mental his thinking already says that he's either afraid of blacks, or he thinks that black folk need to be locked up.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's imperative. I know there are people that say you don't have a right to know, my race, but I think it's important for us to know who they're stopping.
And then one thing that was very important that you mentioned in the beginning was you said that they just got to make a report. So I thought they had to ask the person these questions. They got to make a report. So if you just get randomly pulled over, and honestly, the cop can he can write whatever he wants to write in that report. So that's a major problem already right there. Because if I'm the chief of police and that first month go by and I look at the report before I submit it, and we've only pulled over 5 white people and we pulled over 50 black folks, and like, look, we're gonna call a meeting, and they know I leave the cell phone outside. Look, I need y'all to pull over, or whoever you pull over, just mark them down as white so we can level this thing out.
Right.
Because that's gonna happen. But and there's nothing perfect, because you got human error in there.
Sure.
I do feel like that the leadership in law enforcement, one or two things got to happen. Either they got to be flipped out, or like retrained themselves. Because if you've been, let's be real, if you've been in the police force for 30 years, and 30 years, that's what, 1990, right? So if you came in 1990 and you was trained by somebody that was already in the police force for 30 years, so that puts us back to what, 1960? So the person that was training him is from the 60s.
Right.
So he's carrying the same training. It just keeps recycling itself. At some point, you got to break the cycle by having either new people come in, or it didn't work for the educational system. But getting elected people who are not in the education system to govern the people that are in,
Right.
So maybe you have to have a board that's governing the actual law enforcement people, and it may not be law enforcement.
No, it shouldn't be.
Right.
You're right. See, city managers are supposed to manage the chief of police, but because of unions, they find it very difficult to do that. And to me, I think that we've gotten to a place where we are afraid of our police forces. We're afraid of them when they say, like in Baltimore, for example. You remember when the police decided, since you all tried to prosecute one of our fellow brethren, we're going to just take our time to answer a call. See, to me, you don't have that latitude. See, I don't have that latitude to just say in my job, because I'm upset because you
Right.
because you fired somebody else, that I'm not going to do my job? No, I get fired. It's like we're afraid of them. Let me tell you, that's one thing that I admired about Ronald Reagan. That's the one thing I admired about him. You know, I didn't like his economic theory, but I admired his take on being accountable. When the air traffic controllers said, if you don't give us a raise, we're going to go on strike, he said, I'll fire every last one of you. And they didn't believe it. And guess what he did?
Fire all of them.
He fired all of them, right? And the supervisors had to come on board, and they had to work double shifts. The military those controllers had to come and help out, and they went on a hiring spree. And they hired controllers and trained them. Reason why I know, because I applied for one of them jobs myself. They hired controllers left and right. Those new controllers, when they came on board, they knew why they got them jobs.
Right.
Because the other folk got fired for acting like a fool.
Right.
So the new controllers, you have not heard them talk about strikes. You ain't heard them talk about, I don't care how heavy the workload get.
Right.
You don't hear that stuff. I don't know why we are so afraid of these policemen. They work for us.
Right.
We are the taxpayers. You know, if they say we're going to go on strike, then you say, you know what? Don't come to work. Let 50% of y'all call in sick. I better get 50 doctors to tell 50% of the doctors better give you, slips.
Right.
But we just go for it.
Right.
Had the police force call in sick and nobody said bring your doctor's note.
It's like that one. There's one place where half the police force resigned, and I saw the news article. I said, okay, like you're resigning because you're trying to make a statement, but here's what it's actually saying. I'm resigning because I can't put my knee on the back of a black person's neck. That's what it's really saying.
I can't have my way.
I can't have my way. And I'm like, why? Because you signed up to be a police officer for the absolute wrong reason.
Absolutely.
So if you are offended by them putting parameters, you can't do a chokehold and things like that, or it's too hard for me to do my job. Like, you around here busting heads. It's like, this ain't Chicago, the TV show Chicago PD.
Right.
You know, granted, I get it. Just like in the movie Training Day.
Mm-hmm.
You need some cops out there that need to be wolves. I get it. The fight against the extreme people. I get it. I had no issue.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can wrap my head around that. Because I don't want to,
I can't wrap my head around that.
You can't wrap your head around that?
And I'm going to tell you why. The military doesn't think that way.
But they have special forces in the military.
But the special forces are not wolves.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
They're going to war in Afghanistan. And
Yeah.
they're not thinking that way. I tell you who else don't think that way. Correctional officers. See, when you're on the street, here's the bottom line. 90%, more than 90, majority of people are peacekeeping people.
Yeah.
It's just one or two bad guys. In the prison, everybody is a bad guy. And they don't think that way. You know, I'm just saying.
Right.
You don't have to be a wolf. You need a brain. See, the policeman's job is to de-escalate. A wolf doesn't de-escalate. A wolf escalates because it thinks the way I'm going to get is by showing my teeth.
Yeah.
I'm saying when we select policemen, I think the selection process needs to be modified. So we select people that understand what it means to safely manage the city, right? Certain calls should not be handled by policemen.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
And when they are, they escalate quickly, right? They escalate real quickly. Why in the world should a policeman be called because a 13-year-old stole a piece of candy?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's a waste of taxpayers' time, money.
Yeah.
But that's what happens, right? If a 15-year-old trespasses, they need a policeman to come. Not necessarily. You know, I'm just saying there's something that they should handle. See, I don't think you need wolves. I think you need people with brains. Okay, and I'll tell you why I'm saying this. Why is it in the white community they don't use wolves? They got all the guns.
Right.
Right? The average black person does not have an assault weapon.
No, they do not.
I remember, it's been a few years back, out in the Midwest, this farmer got upset because the federal government said you can't keep grazing on our land and not pay. And the farmer said, yes, I will, because I pay taxes. The government said, no, you can't. Mercenaries came from all over with assault weapons and stood their ground and said, we're going to protect this farmer. And they did not send wolves in. They waited them out.
Yeah.
We had wolves, they didn't use them.
You're right.
The Black Panther, they sent wolves in.
Most definitely.
Right? See, you know,
Right.
let's say even with gangbangers, you know, who do gangbangers normally kill?
Oh, the game bangers.
You don't, right? You don't need a wolf. They're already killing each other.
Right.
So you don't need a wolf. Oh, you know, I'm not saying there aren't some innocent bystanders, but you don't need a wolf.
Right.
You know, you don't. If I'm going to go and arrest you, I don't need to beat you upside the head to arrest you.
No.
I don't need to. You know, there are ways that if I use my brains, I can get you without being a wolf. You know, I'm saying be the fox. Think, de-escalate. You know, we can catch a lion without killing it. We can catch a rhinoceros without killing it.
Mm-hmm.
We can catch a cobra without killing it. But they'll tell me they can't catch a black man without killing it.
That's a good point.
That don't make sense to me. You could have a gun with a net attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Now he on the ground. What are you gonna do? Nothing.
Yeah.
You could shoot him with a dart, paralyze him. He run 10 feet and drop down.
So do you think we should go the route of England, where the majority of the police do not have lethal weapons?
I don't have a problem with police having lethal weapons. I have a problem with police thinking they need to use lethal weapons. That's my thing.
So which one do you think is easier to do? Remove the weapons or convince the police that they don't need to use it?
In a prison, we didn't have lethal weapons.
No.
Average ratio of officer to inmate was about 1 to 45. And we didn't use lethal weapons at all. But yet we still maintain reasonable order.
Right.
Because most of the inmates want order. Even the bad guys want order. They may want their order, but they want order.
Right.
So it was, the idea was to use your brains, you know, and that's what I did when I worked. I used my brains. Training to me is the problem. So I think you can train a person, just like you said earlier, right? The 30-year vet.
Right.
Can I change your mind? If I train you right, I can. You know, but if I train you to be afraid, you're going to be afraid.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
If I train you not to be afraid, you're not going to be afraid. If a part of the training is you got to always watch over your shoulder. If the part of the training tells you that the people are out to get you, you got to be careful all the time. You start viewing everybody a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you shouldn't be careful, but training is essential, I think, in changing the mindsets of people. I went to a police training. I think I mentioned to you this before.
Mm-hmm.
And the trainer said that black folk were more apt to commit crimes.
Right.
You know, and we debated it. And I was right. Of course, you know, according to her, I was wrong, but
Right.
I was right. You know, how often do you hear of mafia figures getting killed by police?
Oh, you hardly ever hear it.
And they don't have a problem killing people.
No, they don't. Matter of fact, they be sitting outside drinking coffee and tea, watching the feds drive by.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they wave to them.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, again, and that's why I guess for me, but again, your premise is on point, that if they're going to keep the information yeah, somebody's gonna fudge it. You know, somebody's
Right.
gonna say, you know, I stopped
Right.
four whites and one black. But I'm just hoping that there are enough policemen with integrity, because I don't think that most policemen don't have integrity. I think most of them do. I think it's a part of just how we are in general. See, you know, all of us have prejudices. I have prejudices, but it don't mean I don't have integrity. And I think that the policeman who is prejudiced but has integrity will still say, yeah, and be proud of it. Yeah, I stopped 12 of them little, you know, pickaninnies.
Right.
And they deserve to be stopped. You know,
Right.
like that one police chief who said, we don't shoot enough black people.
It's a shame.
Right.
But you know, another thing that's going to come out of this too is that black communities are over policed. Because see, just by the sheer fact that if you put 3 squad cars more in a black community than you put over in the white neighborhoods, of course you're going to have more people, black people pulled over, because you got more police squad cars there
Right.
patrolling the areas.
Right.
So it's going to be like, well, what can we do? So what you can just either you lay off some people, or you have what was back in the day when they had the walking beat cops. They just walk down the street.
More community policing, a real community
Real community policing, like you just part of, like you ain't even got a weapon. You just walking down the street. It's like, when can we get to that?
Well, and that's why, you know, I think people, like when people talk about defunding the police, the people on the right have misconstrued what that really means. Defunding doesn't mean we don't want police. Defunding means we want to change how we spend the money, right? Like you were saying, like in your neighborhood and my neighborhood, here's what we both know. You ain't seen a policeman in your neighborhood since you've been there, probably. You know?
Right.
I can count on, you know, 2 fingers, and I've been in my neighborhood, you know, since 1991. You know, number of times I've seen a policeman in my neighborhood, right? Now, does that mean that crime doesn't happen in my neighborhood? It happens every day. You know why? Because I know folk that drive drunk through my neighborhood all the time.
Right.
You know? So that's a crime right there, right? We have had break-ins. So there's like people still aren't breaking in home. They're doing that too. Now, but in low-income neighborhoods, see, it's really become a police state. To me, they have the wrong type of people in the neighborhood. You don't need policemen. You need people that understand social deprivation. You need social workers. You need psychologists. You need people that's going to be there to help people lift themselves up and can do it in a way that makes them feel good about themselves.
Right. So
rather than putting 5 policemen in, put 5 case managers in, so that the people in the neighborhood know the case manager.
Right.
And they know him personally, and they know if you got a problem. So now I know if Daquan is come home and be whooping up on his wife's head every day because he's frustrated.
Right.
Then you don't necessarily need the police, because the police ain't gonna fix what's wrong with Daquan. You know,
all they're gonna do is lock him up,
and he still comes out angrier.
Right. It just keeps feeding itself, and it's just a situation to where if it starts out bad, like -1 times whatever number that you put after that, it's still going to be a negative.
That's right.
So it's like you come out the gate already negative when a police state like that in the hood. And we're not talking like the projects. We're talking like regular, 2-3 streets from the projects where it's still not as great. But if you got that police state mentality going through there, and then the people there are afraid themselves of the police. So you are snitches get stitches. Like, well, they ain't gonna say nothing because they don't know what you gonna like. Are you gonna be dragging me to court? Or are you gonna bring up the stuff that I may have done? Or I ain't squeaky clean, or I got some back taxes, but are you gonna be bringing all that into this? It's like, you got stuff like that. It's like, black people like, you know what? It ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm straight.
But we know the little joke anyway.
Yeah.
When you live in a neighborhood like, the neighborhoods like I grew up in, and when I first got married, them kind of neighborhoods, I knew the guy next door. I mean, he might have been selling a little pot, but I knew him.
Right.
So I didn't see any need to tell on him because, to my thinking, so what are you selling a little pot?
Right.
You know, I didn't care. That's how he, made that car payment, or that's how he, took care of that baby,
Right.
this kind of thing. And I think, that's our dynamic. I mean, it's just like in other neighborhoods where they know they know who got the liquor steal.
Right.
You know,
Right. Who got shot houses down the street?
right? And they don't turn them guys in. You know, they got the liquor steal. They know in those neighborhoods, white neighborhoods where in the hills and whatnot.
Yeah.
They don't turn them in.
No.
But people don't think bad about them for not turning them in. But in our neighborhood, they think the opposite. Neighborhood's bad because you all won't do anything. Yeah, we don't want nobody killing us either.
Right.
And so, and certainly, I get it that there are some stray bullets and there are some people that do crime that should not be done. There's armed robberies, all this kind of thing that should not be done. But we have to start focusing on why you're doing it, not just lock you up. Because lock you up is not the answer.
Yeah.
If I lock you up at 18 and you spend 5 years, you come out a better criminal because you're going to learn some stuff while you're in there.
Right.
Because jails are not really made for the rehab. Neither prisons are not really. But if we can put, like I say, those social teams in, where you get to know people, you get to respect people, and give them the mechanism to help people out, that's what will change things. But again, we need the empirical evidence to show people that that's what's happening. And I think that's why it's important for somebody to capture that data to say, you know what, this is what's going on, in Lake Edward or in Campus East or whatever, every time they turn the reports in, even though their span of control may take them all the way up to a white neighborhood, everybody they pull is always in that black neighborhood.
Is it right?
Because even though they might say they were white, but if everybody in Lake Edward, you keep putting it white, but if in Lake Edward,
Right.
we know something is not right.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. So one thing I do like about what we do with this podcast, Dr. Daniels, and things we talk about, we don't just sit around like other people and have a bunch of rhetoric. We actually talk about certain things, have possible solutions in there. They may be right, and then some right, some wrong, some in between, but at least we're giving the people a type of solution that, or ways you can look at, say, okay, that was a possible solution that you put forth as a new law. Here's what's wrong with that law.
Yes.
And we understand that on the first pass, because it's going through a bunch of hands, so it's not going to be perfect, but this is things that's wrong with that law.
Yes.
So we can work on, and one thing about the police, as you know, is that the law is the guideline for them, and they can really manipulate that to fit what is really needed. That's the whole point of the Constitution. It's like it's vague for a reason. Like when they have regulations for certain things, it's vague for a reason so people can manipulate it a little bit and get some wiggle room. So all we really ask for this new law is the wiggle room to be in the favor of making sure that we get the right data.
Right.
So we'll be able to see, the evidence. How I always tell people, you always don't chastise a person, chastise the behavior.
Right.
And say, okay, this is the behavior that the law enforcement has. All we got to do is change this, and then find out why is it like that. We've already discussed part of the reason why. It's because we have 3-4 squad cars in the black neighborhood and only one. Matter of fact, in my neighborhood, there's one cop car because the district police is down the street. He goes over up in the cut by himself and just sits there. I think he goes to sleep because, I got to be out here, so I'm going to go up in here and just, I ain't trying to find nothing.
Right, I've seen him. I go through slow, though, just in case.
Just in case. But, another thing that's really crazy about all this, Dr. Daniels, is in the black neighborhood. Now, what was funny? For full transparency, in my house, because we've talked about it, I went ahead and built out a whole bar. My dad comes over. He said, "What? You can make some money in here. You can make some money. You know, back in the day, we weren't no clubs. We went to shot houses, and people had bars set up just like this, and we paid 50 cents or $1 per drink. Man, you could sell stuff. It's like, I ain't trying to go to jail. But it was just funny how he said, yeah, everybody where he grew up at, you knew where the places were.
Absolutely.
The police left you alone as long as you weren't selling like drugs, like hard drugs. Other than they knew where you was at.
Right.
So it's like you already know law enforcement has laws. Some of them they enforce, and some of them they don't. So it's just funny how over time. And me and my father talked about this. He is predicting that the coronavirus thing is going to drive the home bars back up, and especially around here.
Already has.
Right, because you know what's funny? If you go to Haynes right now on Virginia Beach Boulevard, shout out to Haynes, we would like to get a sponsorship, send some money. So they told me that they sold out of almost all their bars in 1 month.
Well, the reports are that the one business that has flourished more than any other business has been the alcohol and beverage control store.
Yeah.
So you're right, and people are doing that, and you're right that police have that discretion, and that's a prime example of their discretion. And we just want to make sure that when they're using their discretion, that they're using it fairly.
Right.
That if you're going to give one group a warning, that you give all groups a warning before you arrest them. If you're going to, give tickets out for tail lights, then give everybody a ticket for tail light being out.
Right.
Don't give one. Don't let the blue-eyed blonde get away.
Right.
And let the person with the braids and
Right.
pay that big fine. And I just think that's key. I know we will never live in a post-racial society. I just don't think we ever will. People say, "Well, I don't see color." Stop lying. You do see color.
Right.
There's no way you can not see color.
Right.
But we may not can treat everyone equal, but we can treat everyone equitably. And I think that to me should be our focus. And I'm hopeful that at some point in time that we can stop fighting about whether or not the police have rights and whether or not the citizens have rights, and recognize that your right as a policeman is your right to do what you're getting paid to do. Your right as a citizen is to be treated as a citizen. And so no matter what your color, no matter what ethnic background, no matter what your gender, that those rights prevail. And I think if we can do that, we'll be in a good place.
Yeah, I agree. Thank y'all so much for listening and watching. This is your host, CB Baker. Till next time. Peace.
All righty.